Are you one of the 8 billion people around the world who don't live in Ireland or aren't Irish? Would you like your own home, your own place, just to be given to you? Well, fear not. The Irish state has you covered. Okay, so let me preface this whole thing by just saying that Ireland as a nation is broke. We're broke, and after this year and a half of crazy draconian lockdowns, our economy's in the toilet. It's a zombie economy. Our borrowings are now over 250 billion, I believe. On top of that, we have a housing crisis. We have Irish citizens sleeping in tents along the Grand Canal in Dublin, on the main shopping thoroughfares of the capital city, and many other places. It's an absolute catastrophe. Something I haven't seen before in my lifetime in this country. Now, having said that, there's another section of Irish society which are doing very well, and have been doing very well, and never stopped doing very well, regardless of any virus or any health issues. But the purpose of this video is, it's about a thing we have here called direct provision. Direct provision is a system that we introduced in 1999. It was in response to the then boom in the economy, the Celtic Tiger, as we called it back then, which died on its arse. Eventually exploded, as these bubbles always do. But it attracted in something that we hadn't really ever seen in Ireland, which was a huge number of asylum seekers or economic migrants, people from all over the place, essentially just fetching up here, jumping the queue, not going through the immigration system, just bypassing it, coming in the backs of trucks, overstaying student visas, all that sort of stuff that you see all over the world. Well, we, out of nowhere, got a huge amount of this, and we were swamped. We didn't really have any mechanisms to deal with it effectively because it had never happened before, and as usual, our politicians are great at seeing things coming down the track. They're always reacting to things. They're never ahead of the curve, they're always behind the curve. Anybody who's lived here for any amount of time knows this. So we developed this direct provision situation, which was essentially they didn't build, well, they did build some of them, holding areas, if you like, accommodation to house all these people, as opposed to having them just wandering around willy-nilly all over the place and nobody knowing where anybody was or what anybody was doing. They were essentially villages, if you like, set up to house all these people so they could be processed, so they could be provided for. They were given full bed and board and health care and education, essentially everything. And they were put into these blocks, these villages, which then, of course, overflowed because the flood just kept on coming. There was the whole system bogged down and broke down, as in people weren't getting processed, and when they were processed, the vast majority of them were found to be bogus, but then they would all appeal, because to appeal cost them nothing. The state was paying for it anyway, so why wouldn't you? And of course the legal profession loved it because they were charging a fortune for these services. So certain people were doing very well out of this. Of course, the direct provision centres quickly overflowed because there was more people coming in versus the people who were there in the system were taking years to get processed. And then even when they were refused and appeals were refused and everything was refused, they just wouldn't leave anyway. They just stayed where they were. And they could, because we have ineffectual governance here. So eventually these overflowed, so then they started renting hotels, they started taking leases on all kinds of bed and breakfast accommodation. They were just shoving them in everywhere. They were putting up. It was costing a fortune, and the whole thing became utterly and is utterly dysfunctional, purely by nature of the fact that there's never an end game. When somebody goes through the system and is adjudicated to just be an economic migrant, to have bypassed the system, to have broken the immigration laws, to have flouted our legalities and flouted our taxpayers, nobody's ever deported, really. There's really no sanction for it. It's just like, I don't know, you get a letter saying, you know, we've looked at everything and you've been adjudicated to just be a fraudster. But sure, yeah, so we'll leave you to it then. And that's the end of it. And they just stay in the system, and the system gets worse. So the whole thing is coming to a head now, because suddenly the pearl clutchers, the bleeding heart liberals, of which in Ireland we have a lot, I've now decided, no, this is inhumane. We can't keep people in these conditions where they're fed, given room, board, and now they're allowed to work, and now they're getting all the free benefits, and that's inhumane. We can't keep them in these conditions. It's akin to a concentration camp or something like that. So they want it got rid of. So the pearl clutchers, of course, always win, because our politicians are weak and feeble, and there's not a backbone amongst any of them. And of course, they're all hostages to all these interest groups and all these left-leaning, woke, progressive NGOs, of which there seems to be one for everybody in the country. So they want it got rid of. So they've decided, yes, we're going to get rid of. But what are they going to do? Well, I'll tell you what they're going to do. They've decided they're going to essentially, within a period of 3 months or so, give everybody in the system their own place, their own home, their own house or apartment or room or whatever, because we're good like that. Now, this is for asylum seekers, not asylum getters. This is just asylum seekers, of which, going by all the data that we have on this since we've been dealing with it, the vast majority of whom are adjudicated in the end after an exhaustive process, and not an inexpensive one, to be false, to have no merit, to not, in fact, be asylum seekers, to just being economic migrants, i.e., in terms of the Irish taxpayer and the Irish state, fraudsters. Yeah, doesn't matter. But going to give them all their own accommodation after about 3 months. Let's read what's going on, because I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, nah, you surely you're joshing with me there. That couldn't possibly be true. And a nation that's so heavily indebted, an economy in tatters, and it's broke, basically giving essentially anyone in the whole wide world their own accommodation, their own home, their own apartment, their own rooms, whilst you have a housing crisis? No. Bear with me. Let me show you what I know. Let me show you what's going on, because nobody ever reads this stuff, right? Nobody ever bothers with this stuff. Let's jump into the journal here. Who have we got? The journal. Newsground. Ground News is a good thing to use if you're ever worried about going down rabbit holes, because the reason I use it is it breaks down each publication, whatever you're reading, and it tells you it's whether it's left-leaning, right-leaning, centrist. It gives you its kind of bias. Now, doesn't mean it's wrong, whatever the article is. It just means you kind of know where they're coming from, which I find quite handy. It just stops you getting bogged down in one particular train of thought. It's just useful in this age of fake news. Direct provision should end by 2023, with amnesty offered in 2021 for some, according to Day report. This is Catherine Day, Dr. Catherine Day, who was charged with looking into all this and see what's going on. Asylum seekers living in direct provision for more than 2 years by the end of 2020 should be allowed to remain in Ireland for 5 years. asylum seekers, right? Not getters, seekers. Should be allowed to remain in Ireland for up to 5 years. That's so. The report drawn up by former Secretary General of the European Commission, Dr. Catherine Pearl-Clutching Day, has said an advisory group chaired by Dr. Day of Pearl Clutchers Anonymous has made a number of sweeping recommendations in its report, which is due to be published today, including a once-off grant to people who have lived in the current system for more than 2 years. Why? A once-off grant. So they're living off the Irish taxpayer, full bed and board, access to medical facilities, access to education, and they've been given an allowance. And look, you can't apply logic to these things, really you can't. It also recommends increasing access to the labour market, as in that economy we have now that's collapsed. Yeah, well done with that one. Direct provision was set up in 1999, we got that. The system has been repeatedly criticised by migrants and rights groups due to the length of time people remain in centres while their asylum applications or appeals are processed. I agree with them there. Yeah, it is taking too long. Now, it's not helped by the fact that a lot of these people arrive and they have literally just the clothes they're standing up in. They've gotten rid of all their papers, passports, everything gone. So they have to literally, I mean, where do you start with somebody like that? Where do you start to try and piece together the merits of their case? I don't envy them. I do not envy them. Over €1 billion has been paid to private contractors and businesses since the asylum system was established. It's understood the report recommends that any person who has been living in direct provision for more than 2 years be granted leave to remain for 5 years, pending security vetting. There should be an option to renew this under a once-off case processing approach, which should be put in place by January in order to clear the current backlog of asylum applications. A once-off. I thought every case was once-off. I don't understand what that means. A once-off. Leave to remain is granted to people who have been refused refugee or subsidiary protection but are not deported for humanitarian or other reason. What the other reasons are, I do not know. So these are people who've gone through the system exhaustively and been refused. Essentially, they're fraudsters. Day's report was commissioned by former Justice Minister Charlie Flanagan, another bell-end, useless Justice Minister, totally ineffectual. Thank God he's gone, though not sure we have anything better in place. The advisory group first convened in November 2019 and presented its findings to government in recent days. The current system of accommodating asylum seekers should be ended and replaced by a 3-stage system of state-run accommodation by mid-2023. This is 2021 now. The report recommends. All right. The new reception system outlined in the advisory group's report would see accommodation provided to people at state-owned centres for 3 months. So you fetch up here, just the clothes you're wearing. Hello, how are you? I claim asylum. What for you say? Good to see you. And then basically they put you into this state-run thing, which essentially is what we have now. Except I assume that these people are recommending that instead of renting these facilities, we're going to build them. Where? Don't know. With what money? Don't know. After 3 months, okay, a payment similar to the housing assistant. Oh no, hold on. After 3 months at a reception centre, okay, this is where we're going with this. Applications should be helped to move to own door accommodation through a housing allowance model. They haven't been processed yet. They're just here for 3 months. They still probably don't know who they are. They're trying to figure out who they are, or where they've come from, or what they're doing here, or how they got here, or what they want here. So after 3 months, 12 weeks of just, getting off the back of a truck or off a boat or whatever, after 3 months, they're going to move them into their own accommodation. Do you see where I was going with at the start? That's 8 billion people in the world. 8 billion. Ireland has a population of 5 million. We're good like that. We're good. We're good. When we're good, we're really good. So, a payment similar to the Housing Assistance Payment, HAP, that's a kind of a subsidy that the government gives to help people pay rent if they're, say, out of work or whatever, would also be made available, as well as a weekly allowance under the new systems. This is getting better and better. So they're going to be basically helped to move into their own accommodation. Now, these aren't asylum getters. These are asylum seekers. They mightn't even know who these people are yet after 12 weeks of digging around, depending on how cooperative that person or persons might be. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. 12 weeks in, there you go. We're sorting you out with an apartment there. Best of luck. We'll keep working on that for you, but now you've got your own place. We're going to pay you every week. Still don't know who you are. We're going to pay you. Don't know where you've come from. Doesn't matter. We're going to pay you. So it's all good. I'm liking this. I think I might apply for this myself, actually. It's understood Housing Minister Dara O'Brien has been briefed on the report. Housing Minister in the middle of a housing crisis, so he's getting briefed on this. This is all really, really good stuff. I'm sure the people currently sleeping in tents on Grafton Street and Henry Street and along the Royal Canal, I'm sure they will be absolutely jumping for joy with this largesse on behalf of the Irish state to the people of the world, because, like I said, we're good like that. Which calls for a mix of solutions to accommodate protection applicants. If a person receives international protection or permission to remain in Ireland, they should be provided with support for up to 18 months, according to the report. And being given leave to remain doesn't mean that you're an asylum seeker. It just means, you know, they're letting you stay. You might have been judged to be completely fraudulent in your claim. You could be adjudicated to be totally not an asylum seeker and have no validity to your asylum claim, but for some reason they're letting you stay. For whatever reasons, I don't know. To me, it's pretty simple. If you've gone through the process and you're proven by all the criteria there that you're bogus, what's the problem? You've got to go, right? No? Dr. Day's report was drawn up in consultation with a number of NGOs. Oh, of course it was. Of course it was. Including NASC, the Irish Refugee Council, the Movement of Asylum Seekers, and all the other vested interest groups who are pushing tooth and nail for this, because they know they're pushing an open door. We don't have anybody in government who's got the slightest bit of backbone. All it needs is for the progressive lefty shill press media, the likes of this woman here, who I assume is some kind of EU career civil servant hack who just wants to, we gotta help everybody, somebody think of the children, one of those. So yeah, of course she got all the people in, all the usual suspects who are wringing their hands and decrying the cruelty of the Irish state and how it needs to do more for people who have no right to be here. The report calls for a whole of government, in quotes, response. What the hell is whole of government? This nonsense language. To replace direct provision. Dr. Day previously described the current direct provision as unsatisfactory. I'll tell you what's unsatisfactory. A heap of people bypassing our immigration laws. That's, to me, is unsatisfactory. And the state doing nothing about it. That's unsatisfactory. Don't mind the direct provision. The whole edifice of dysfunction on behalf of the state, on behalf of the authorities, that's what's unsatisfactory to me as a citizen of the country. That's the unsatisfactory bit. But what would I know? Yes. In addition, blinding targets, in quotes, for different stages of the protection process should be introduced to come into effect from 2023. That's literally just a year and a half from now. How they're going to do this and with what money, I don't know. including a 6-month deadline for the International Protection Office to make a first instance decision and a 6-month deadline for the International Protection Appeals Tribunal to make a decision on an appeal. Well, why weren't they doing this from the start? I'll tell you why, because the legal profession were coining it. They love it being buggered up because they're in the middle of the buggering, charging plenty. That's why. And the state didn't mind, because every time one of these things gets adjudicated, comes to the end of the appeals and everything that goes with it, the state has to do something, and the state don't want to do something. Because somebody might say an unkind word if they were to be seen actually obeying the law and removing failed, bogus asylum seekers. Oh, the EU might be upset, or the UN might say something to us. Oh, good Lord, we couldn't have that. This should be supported by an increase in resources for Legal Aid Board to ensure that protection applicants have access to legal service and support from when they arrive in Ireland, it's understood, because, yeah, money's no object. Money, no object here in Ireland. No object. The report also makes provision for increasing access to the labour market by making permission to work available within 3 months of lodging an application for protection. So you fetch up here from anywhere with maybe the most rickety, dumbass, bogus case, right? But they still got to process you. And in the middle of all this, you basically can just, you're good to go. You get your own accommodation, free meals, board, the right to work. Yeah, you can now open a bank account. You can now get an Irish driver's license. I mean, it's... I don't even know why we have... Honestly, I don't know why we have an immigration department. I really am at a loss at this point to know why we even have one. Why? It's doesn't seem to fulfill any actual use. The report calls, yeah, we got that by mid-2023. The report, which is not legally binding, but they're going to use this, I guarantee you they'll be using this as an absolute stick to beat the government into. It's not hard to beat the government because they're all a bunch of lily-livered idiots. There isn't a backbone among them. The only thing that might scupper this is the fact that we're so broke. But don't worry, I'm sure they'll find somewhere to borrow it. Yeah, it will now inform the government's white paper for replacing the controversial system of accommodating asylum seekers in Ireland, which is due to be published in January. Well, I've read it. It is published and I've read it, and it's basically all this. I've read it. It's all this and more. Responsibility for administering direct provision accommodation transferred last week from the Department of Justice to the Department of Children. Children and Youth Affairs. So, what? The responsibility for administering direct provision accommodation transferred to the Department of Children and Youth Affairs? Oh, for God's sake. Yeah. The report and its recommendations will now be considered by a committee overseeing the drafting of the white paper. Yeah, I've read the white paper. Yeah. Okay, you see where that's going. So, all right, let's have a look. Let's have a look at the white paper. Yeah, what the hell? Yeah, the white paper. I've seen it. So, yep, let's have a quick look at the white paper and see what's going on with the white paper, shall we?
Few moments later.
Okay, so here we go. There we go. Nobody ever reads these things. A white paper to end direct provision and to establish a new international protection support service from the Government of Ireland. Yes. Come to me, you huddled masses, and I will give you a free gaff, food and bed and board, and free medical services and free education and free. Yeah, you get the picture. We're so good, you know. We really are so good. I can't imagine why Irish citizens are sleeping rough on the streets of Dublin, and that nobody can afford. Young people of Ireland can't afford to even get a mortgage these days. I don't know how can that be? It's obviously must be in my head, because we're doing all of this great stuff here. Right, so let's see what's in the white paper. Forward from the Taoiseach. I don't give a rat's what he has to say. There is an Irish. What have we got here? Forward from the Taoiseach. Don't give a shit what he has to say. Probably didn't even write it himself. Forward from the Minister for Children. You definitely don't want to see what he has to say. What a bell end. Alright, skip. Let's go. Right then, Chapter 3. A new approach to supporting people seeking refuge. Seeking refuge. So, anybody can seek refuge. Okay. Right. This is a government paper. This is not an article. This is not just wishful thinking. This is now this is serious now. This is government stuff. A new approach to supporting people seeking refuge, regardless of any bona fides that their case has or not. All right. The government has pledged to end direct provision and replace it with a new international protection accommodation policy centred on a not-for-profit approach. Not-for-profit approach, yeah, right. It also committed to publish a white paper by the end of 2020. Well, this is the white paper. Informed by the recommendations of the Pearl Clutchers, expert group, which will set out how this new system will be structured and the steps to achieving it. The programme for government also contains the following commitments. 1. To implement the measures identified by the expert group to ensure that international protection applications are dealt with and brought to finality as quickly as possible, while always ensuring fair procedure and a human rights based approach. Well, we were doing that anyway, I assume. We just weren't doing it quick. To develop new models of community engagement to ensure that the establishment of new accommodation is done in an inclusive and welcoming fashion. To create an annualised capital and current investment programme to action these measures. Don't know what that means. Now, 3.4, a new model of accommodation for international protection applicants. Not recipients, applicants. Phase 1. Accommodation and a reception and integration centre, kind of what we have now. Under the new model, an applicant for international protection will initially be accommodated in a reception and integration centre. So essentially, well, what we have, right? Direct provision. That's where you're going to go first. They're probably just going to tart them up or build new ones, or I don't know. Sure, they have a plan. The reception and integration centres will focus on responding to any vulnerabilities the applicant may have, alongside providing services which meet their needs and ultimately supporting them to live independently. Now, that's just, they don't know who these people are yet, right? This is just somebody who fetched up, just turned up, all right, with the clothes on them. Nothing else, no papers, no passport, no nothing. Okay. The reception and integration centres will be in state ownership and managed by the new International Protection Support Service. In total, the centres will need to have a capacity to accommodate 2,000 people. I don't know why they're picking this. They have no idea. They have no. There's 8 billion people in the world. This is pie in the sky nonsense. They don't. 2,000. Why not 10,000? Why not 2,050? Why not 3,086? Rubbish. These centres will be distinctively different from existing accommodation centres. They will provide individual rooms for single people and own door accommodation for families. Independent living, self-catering options, oh, it sounds very fancy, it's like going on holiday, will be provided for all those accommodated there. Facilities will be available to enable relevant services to have a presence on site and to enable the proposed orientation and English language programmes to be delivered there. Play facilities will also be available for children. This is marvellous stuff. The centres will be structured in a way that ends the institutionalisation associated with direct provision. Bear in mind, the vast majority of people in direct provision are bogus. They're bogus. They've just jumped the queue. They've just bypassed the immigration system. This is not my personal view. This is the stats. This is the statistics of the people who have been adjudicated. I'm just not making this stuff up. It's just the way it is. The centres will be structured in a way that blah blah, we got that. Residents will remain in the centres, right? These own room, own door, self-catering options, free this, free that, free everything, for a maximum of 4 months. Okay? 4 months maximum. Maximum. 16 weeks. Before moving to accommodation within the community. This approach is based on recommendations made by the Pearl Clutching Advisory Group report, the Irish Refugee Council report, implementing alternatives to direct provision, and best practice internationally. So okay, in this few weeks, they may still not even know who these people are, or where they've come from, or what validity they have to even be here, or even how they got here. So they're going straight into this reception area, own room, own accommodation, own apartment, own whatever. Full bed and board, English lessons, medical services, everything. Within 4 months maximum, they're moved out into the community. Still don't know who they are, but they're moved out into the community. Phase 2, accommodation in the community. Once the 4-month programme of orientation, support and integration available at phase 1 is complete, if the application has not received a positive first instance decision on their application or is undergoing an appeals process, we all know how they work and how many of them there are, they will transition from a reception and integration centre to a house or an apartment, our own room in a small apartment building. Oh, this is absolutely marvellous. How do I think I'll just row a boat out into the bay there, chuck all my documents into the sea, my passport, and row back into shore, develop a broken English accent, and say, what for you say, I come claim asylum in your lovely country. What for you say? Geez, I'd have a house in 4 months. This would be great. Marvellous. Phase 2 accommodation will put family life, autonomy and privacy at its core. We still don't know who these people are, by the way. They haven't got anything. They're just here. The only thing they've proved maybe so far is that they're alive. It is considered that applicants experience higher levels of well-being and that integration outcomes are improved where families and individuals live in own-door houses or units situated within communities. The aim is to enable applicants to live in accommodation located in the community as soon as possible. Applicants will need to enter the phase 1 accommodation in a reception integration centre in order to be eligible for the accommodation that will be available in phase 2. Well, 12 weeks, I could probably handle it. Yeah. Maximum 4 months, could be out in 2 into my own gaff. Nice one. I tell you, the Irish people are great. You know, how do you do it? How do we do it? I don't know. I really don't know. And I'm sure the people sleeping in tents around the city centre, they don't know either. Applicants will need to enter phase 1. We got that. This is to ensure that all applicants undertake the English language and orientation programme. Free lessons. That's another. If you're looking for a career, go into teaching English. I have a feeling it's going to be very big in the next few years. That particular niche. Just saying. This is to ensure that all applicants undertake the English thing, yeah, and it's designed to support better integration outcomes later. We still don't know if they're adjudicated to be bogus or not, but sure, it's all great. Free gaff. Moving to community-based accommodation. During phase 1, caseworkers will work with applicants and their families to identify the accommodation options that are best suitable to their needs. Applicants will be consulted as to their preference with regard to accommodation type and location. They'll be consulted. Well, that's proper order. You know, you wouldn't want to have them living anywhere that they, I don't know, mightn't want, mightn't like. No, it's all free, and they probably come from countries that are, let's just say, a bit poorer. So no, we couldn't possibly have them in any accommodation that they might not like. I mean, the window might overlook a nice green area. Possibly the front door might be facing the wrong angle when the sun comes up in the morning. We couldn't have any of that. Jesus, like, no way. What kind of cruelty would that be to put on a person that just arrived and we still don't know who they are? A single person, for instance, the decision as to accommodation for phase 2 will be subject to family composition, option availability and applicant preferences. A single person, for instance, will be offered a different accommodation option from that offered to families. Specific accommodation options will be offered exclusively to people deemed vulnerable, where the nature of the vulnerability requires one, a particular type of accommodation, such as accessible accommodation where a person has a mobility difficulty, for instance. Certainly no mobility difference getting as far as Ireland. We are an island, you know. You can't even walk here. So obviously they haven't got that much mobility difficulty if they made it this far, one would imagine, but that's just me, I might have this all wrong. For instance, or 2 additional supports while in phase 2. For those applicants who do not receive a positive decision while in reception integration. Now this is only 12 weeks. I don't know how you're going to make a decision that quick. Well, maybe they have discovered some new ways, because I guarantee you a lot of these people who are bogus, they ain't going to be helping all that much. Phase 2 accommodation will be provided. So let me get this again. For those applicants who do not receive a positive decision while in reception and integration centre, phase 2 accommodation in the community will be provided, so they'll still get their own gaff. So it's all good, it's all gravy. An advanced visit to this accommodation will be arranged by their caseworker. Right? Yeah, well, fair enough. Yeah, take them to see their new house that they're going to be given free. The applicant will either meet the application will meet either the support staff or the not-for-profit, or not-for-profit. Somebody's paying these people. I guarantee it's the taxpayer who's paying them. Because certainly not the people they're taking with them to see their new gaff. Providing accommodation where the applicant is deemed vulnerable, or the resettlement worker where the applicant is to be accommodated in a lower support option. The good organisation that is. TUSLA Education Support Service will always. But there must be no end of money. I don't know where I'm getting it. There must be no end of money. Following a blended approach to delivery of housing, the accommodation options that will be offered to applicants are: 1. Accommodation provided or managed by approved housing bodies or by NGOs. One for everyone in the audience there, NGOs. One for everyone in the audience. Those deemed vulnerable will in particular be supported through these options. This option will cater for the majority of applicants' needs. Or 2. Urban renewal schemes, particularly focused on single people. Again, don't know who they are, they just arrived here. Yeah, still trying to figure out who they are, but make sure we get a gaff for them. Hosting in the community, including rent-a-room schemes, particularly focused on single people. Or private tenancies, particularly focused on families. Where applicants have lower support needs, they will be routed to resettlement workers in local areas who will ensure that they have information on relevant service and entitlements, and who will link them with English language training. Told you that's a coming industry, get in on that one. Employment and enterprise supports and networks. Women-only accommodation will be available for female applicants who have experienced gender-based violence and who need ongoing psychological support. Specific accommodation will be provided for both female and male victims of trafficking. Yeah, so you kind of get the picture there. Essentially, that's not an article, that's the government paper. That's where they're going. That's the actual real living, breathing government white paper there. So I think it's marvellous. I think the 8 billion people currently on planet Earth who are not Irish citizens and are not living in Ireland currently, I think they should all have their own gaff. And they should all be given their own accommodation, and of course caseworkers and medical care and education, English lessons. I mean, if you happen to be from Mongolia or possibly you're from Lapland, or you're from some outer islands in the Pacific, you may not speak our language here. Fear not, we have that covered. The government has that covered. So I think it's amazing. I think it's a testament to how great of a people we are and how wealthy we are. And the fact that the nation's broke should in no way infringe on this wonderful, well thought out, well documented, far-reaching, far-seeing plan. I think it's the way all nations should be. We all know they're not, but Ireland should be like a beacon. Yes, how's the world? How's the world? You know, they sang about it, was in the 80s, feed the world, let them know it's Christmas. Well, Ireland is now how's the world? How's the world? Let them know it's Ireland. So, yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of Irish people who currently can't get a home and have no possibility of getting a mortgage and no possibility of ever affording anything like their own accommodation that they would feel comfortable in. I think all those people should do what I'm going to do, which is get a small boat, rowing boat, possibly get a lift on a trawler, get a bit out to sea, chuck all your documents into the water, passports, everything, PPS, the lot, just chuck it all in, just wear some basic clothing, come back to shore, speak in broken English. It's not that hard, what for you say and all that. Go to your local office, your local government office, and say, what for you say, I here claim asylum, thank you kindly. And something along those lines. It doesn't have to be those exact words. Something along those exact words will probably do. You could possibly not even speak, maybe, you know, pretend you don't speak English if you want to be a bit more creative. Of course, they'll immediately pick up on the fact that you're an asylum seeker and that you need your own accommodation. You need a house or apartment, possibly your own room, your own key accommodation. They'll take you to a centre where you'll be fed, you'll be assessed, you'll get medical attention if you need any. You'll get English lessons if you probably won't need them. I won't need them, but I won't tell them that. My psychological, you get it all there. It's all good. It's all gravy. And yes, well done, Irish government. You're playing a stormer. Keep those votes coming and keep on borrowing. Yes, because that's all we're doing at the moment. We're borrowing, and we're borrowing a heck of a lot. Good luck with that.